They stopped returning my calls the week before my bar exam. My father said, in the same flat tone he used to discuss the weather, that they needed some time apart from me. My mother didn't say anything at all. She just let him speak and looked at the floor. I didn't know then that my brother had told them I'd been fired from my internship for stealing client files. I had not been fired. I had never stolen anything in my life, but I didn't know that's what they believed until 3 weeks later, when my aunt, my father's sister, let it slip during a phone call she thought she was having with my mother. I'd borrowed my mother's old cell phone to call her because mine had died, and when my aunt said, "I just think it's so sad what Nora did at the firm," I had to sit down on the kitchen floor. Nora, that's me. My brother's name is Stellan. He's 2 years younger than me, and for as long as I can remember, he was the one my parents worried about. The one they drove to tutoring 3 times a week. The one they co-signed for, bailed out of, showed up for at every small and large occasion while slowly, quietly, treating my milestones like scheduling conflicts. I don't say that to make them sound like monsters. They aren't. But there is a particular kind of invisible damage that comes from being the child who's considered fine. The one who doesn't need anything. The one who will figure it out. I figured out a lot of things on my own. I figured out how to apply for scholarships when they said law school wasn't in the budget. I figured out how to negotiate my first lease, buy my own groceries, file my own taxes at 19. I figured out how to take the LSAT twice, improve my score by 14 points, and get into a program I was genuinely proud of, without once asking them to proofread my personal statement. None of that felt bitter at the time. It just felt like being capable. So when my father said they needed space, I thought, for about 48 hours, that it was some kind of misunderstanding. Something I could clear up with a sit-down conversation and maybe a printed calendar showing that I had in fact been at my desk at the firm every single day of my internship. That I had a supervisor who had already offered me a position after graduation. That there was no file, there was no theft, there was nothing. I called my brother first. He answered on the second ring, which surprised me. I said, "I need to know what you told Mom and Dad." He paused for just long enough. That pause told me everything. Then he said, "I told them what I heard." "What you heard from who?" "From people at the firm." I had never seen my brother at my firm. He had no reason to be anywhere my firm. He worked in sales for a company that made industrial flooring, and the only lawyers he'd ever spoken to were the ones who handled his DUI in 2019. "Stellan," I said carefully. There was nothing to hear. He said, "Look, I'm not trying to start something. Mom and Dad were asking why you seemed stressed, and I mentioned that I'd heard things weren't going great for you." That was the moment I understood. He hadn't accused me of anything provably false. He had planted a seed. Something vague enough that my parents could water it themselves, with every anxiety they'd ever had about my choices. Law school, the city I moved to, the fact that I didn't call home enough, the boyfriend they'd only met once. He handed them a narrative and they finished writing it without him. I spent the next month trying to correct it. I sent my father an email with my supervisor's name and direct phone number and an invitation to call. He didn't call. I mailed my mother a copy of my offer letter from the firm, the one dated 2 weeks after Stellan had apparently heard things weren't going great. She texted back 3 days later, "We just think you need to work on some things, honey. We love you." I stared at that text for a long time. "We love you" attached to "we don't believe you" is a specific kind of hurt that I don't have a clean word for. It sits in your chest like a stone that's too smooth to grip. I stopped trying after that. Not out of anger, exactly. More out of exhaustion. I had a bar exam to take. I had an apartment to furnish and a job to start and a life to build, and I could either spend my energy dismantling a lie my family had already decided to believe, or I could go forward. I went forward. The bar exam was in July. I passed on the first attempt. My results came in on a Tuesday afternoon, and I was standing outside a coffee shop when my phone showed the notification, and I cried. Not the pretty kind, the ugly kind. where you have to lean against a brick wall because your knees go a little soft. And the only person I called was my friend Winslow, who screamed so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. My parents didn't know I'd passed. I hadn't told them I was taking it. I started at the firm in September. My supervisor, a woman named, well, I'll call her my boss because she valued her privacy, and she also became one of the most important people in my professional life, put me on a family trust litigation case within my first 6 weeks. It was complicated and exhausting, and I loved it completely. I also met my husband that fall. He was doing pro bono work through a housing rights clinic 2 floors below our office. We got coffee because he held the elevator for me on a Friday when I was carrying an unreasonable number of bankers' boxes, and he helped without being asked. And then, he made me laugh in the 40 seconds between the lobby and the 4th floor. We were engaged 2 years later. My parents did not come to our wedding. I had sent an invitation, a real one, paper, with a response card and the little envelope. My mother sent back the response card with a check tucked inside, which I did not cash, and a note that said she was sorry they couldn't make it, that it was a difficult time. She didn't say what was difficult. My father didn't respond at all. Stellan was in the photos on social media, tagged by a cousin, grinning at some family function the same weekend. So it was not, as it turned out, a difficult time for everyone. I folded up the note from my mother and put it in a box in our closet, and I did not look at it again. My husband understood more than I expected. His own family had fractures, different shapes but similar depths. He didn't try to fix it, or reframe it, or tell me that time heals things. He just made sure I knew that whatever family we built together was real and enough, and he meant it the way people mean things when they've thought about them. That helped. More than I can properly explain, that helped. 4 years passed. I made partner track at 31. We bought a house. We got a dog, a large, opinionated golden retriever named Biscuit who believed he was entitled to the left side of the couch, and was correct. I coached a mock trial team at a local high school on Thursday evenings. I grew a herb garden on our back porch that was mostly successful except for the cilantro, which died 3 times, and I refused to mourn. I was, genuinely and without performance, doing well. I thought about my family sometimes the way you think about a place you used to live. Not with constant pain, just occasionally and from a certain distance, and with a complicated feeling you don't quite have a name for. My aunt, the one who had let the truth slip that day on the phone, the one who had felt terrible about it and told me so. The one who sent me a card when I passed the bar and a gift when I got married and texted me photos of her garden every spring. She was my threadback. She never pressured me. She never said you should call your mother or your father asks about you. She just stayed, quietly, in my life, like a door left open in case I ever wanted to walk through it. Last March, she called me on a Wednesday evening. "I need to tell you something," she said. "And I want to tell you before you find out another way." My brother had been arrested. Not a DUI this time. Something more serious, fraud charges related to his job. I won't go into the details because they're still partially under litigation, and also because they're not the point. The point is that my parents, in trying to find him legal representation, had reached out to 3 different attorneys. 2 had conflicts. 1 was out of the country. My aunt told me that my mother had said quietly, to no one in particular, while sitting at the kitchen table looking at a list of system, Nora would know what to do. My aunt paused after she told me that. I didn't say anything for a moment. Then I said, "How serious are the charges?" "Serious enough," she said. "He's scared." I sat with that for a while after we hung up. My husband was in the kitchen making pasta, and the dog was lying across my feet, and the light was doing that thing it does in March in the evening, going gold and sideways through the windows, and I just sat there and felt the weight of it. Here's what I didn't feel. Triumphant. People always expect that part. The moment where the person who was wronged gets to feel vindicated and satisfied, and proved right. I had spent years imagining, in the darker corners of my thinking, what it would feel like when my family finally needed something from me. I had scripted small, quiet scenes of grace and larger, louder scenes of refusal. I didn't feel either of those things. I felt tired. And then I felt, underneath that, something that surprised me. I felt sorry. Not for myself, which I'd done enough of. For my mother, sitting at her kitchen table, saying my name out loud like an answer to a problem she hadn't admitted was hers. I called her. She answered on the first ring. I could tell she'd been crying. I said, Aunt Renata told me what's happening. A long pause. Then, Nora, I'm so glad. I wasn't sure if you'd. I don't have time for the full conversation right now, I said, and I meant it practically, not cruelly. Tell me the details and I'll help you find someone. I spent the next 4 days making calls. I could not represent my brother myself, conflict of interest, family relationship, and also I'm not a criminal attorney, and I had no intention of becoming one in a pinch. But I knew people. I'd built a network, carefully and deliberately, over 5 years. I knew who was good and who was overpriced, and who to call when you needed someone to show up ready. I found him a good attorney. Not cheap. My parents paid for it. That part was not my problem to solve. I did not go to their house during any of this. Everything was handled by phone and email. My husband knew what I was doing and supported it, without asking me to feel differently than I felt. The evening after I confirmed the attorney arrangement, my mother called back. I answered. She said, I want to explain. Not tonight. I know. I want you to know that we understand now, about what happened. About what Stellan told us. I was quiet. We should have called you, she said. We should have. I don't have an excuse. We should have called. She was crying again. I could hear my father somewhere in the background. Not speaking, I said, I know. And then I said something I had not planned to say, had not rehearsed in any version of this conversation. I don't need an apology right now. I need you to sit with it for a while. I need you to actually sit with what you decided to believe, and why, and what that meant. And then, when you've done that, really done it, not just the version where you apologize and we go back to normal. Call me again. She said very quietly, Okay, I love you, I said. That's not the same thing as saying everything is fine. I hung up. I went into the kitchen. My husband looked at me. I sat down at the table and put my head in my hands, and I didn't cry, exactly, but I was close. He sat down across from me and didn't say anything. Biscuit put his chin on my knee with the gravity of a very serious animal. After a while I said, I think that went as well as it could have. My husband said, Do you believe that? I thought about it. I thought about my mother's voice and my father's silence and Stellan, who had not called me himself, not once. I thought about the offer letter I had mailed that went unacknowledged, and the response card with the check I never cashed, and 4 years of birthdays that passed without anyone from my family calling. I think, I said slowly, that I'm not the same person who needed them to believe me. I know who I am now. I built that without them. And whatever happens next, whether they do the work or they don't, that part doesn't change. My husband nodded. He reached across the table and covered my hand with his. You did something good today, he said. I know, I said. I'm still figuring out how I feel about it. That's the honest truth still. I don't have a clean ending for this. My mother has called twice since then. We've had 2 short conversations, stilted, careful, feeling our way around the edges of something that will take much longer than a phone call to rebuild. My father has not called, but my aunt says he's been asking about me. That's something. Maybe. Stellan reached out once, by text. It said, I know I owe you more than this, but I'm not sure where to start. I haven't responded yet. I'm trying to decide whether that door is one I want to open, and what it would cost me, and whether the version of my brother who sent that text is capable of becoming someone I can trust. I don't know the answer. I'm being honest with myself about not knowing, which feels like its own kind of progress. What I do know is this. I spent years waiting for my family to see me clearly. I stopped waiting when I realized I could see myself clearly, and that was enough to build on. The career, the marriage, the house with the difficult cilantro and the entitled dog, none of that was given to me. None of it was built in spite of something, either, exactly. It was just built. By me, with the people who chose to stay. That has to count for something. I think, when I'm quiet and being really honest, it counts for quite a lot.